Welcome to Evolving Your IT Career in the AI Age. I am so excited to see everybody here in person, or if you're watching this on demand later as a recording, you are the people who are investing in your future and in your career. And you may have heard us talk about AI in this little Microsoft Ignite conference lately and wondering what on earth does it mean for somebody in an IT career, especially if they're not a software developer. My name is Sonia Cuff. I run a team inside developer relations at Microsoft, and I'm joined by my mentor, my friend, my colleague, Rick Claus. Hey, Rick.
How you doing there, Sonia? Yeah, I'm Rick Claus. I also lead a team of folks that talk about AI. I talk about infrastructure as well. Been in the industry now for far too long, like yourselves, but we won't date ourselves that much. And we're excited about this. We were tossing around the idea of doing a session specifically about evolving your career, investing in your skills. We will not be talking about how to deploy LLM models and how to ensure that you've got RAG implemented and that you've got your API keys well protected, all that sort of stuff. That's not the purpose of what this talk is about. But we'll be talking about how you can invest in the skill set to be successful in the new current age of AI.
100%. Let's get started.
So agenda-wise, so it's interesting. We're debating about this when we were creating this content, talking about how do we talk about AI inside of this kind of environment. And so we decided to break it down into specifically looking at for how using AI to get more efficient at doing your job. Then, obviously, next step up is like, well, you know, you can use AI as a learning tool to be able to get more proficient in different things that are brand new. And then finally, we do talk a little bit about implementation, but not the specifics about how you're probably going to be encountering and bumping into AI inside your environments if you're not already bumping into AI inside your environments. So, with that, your job, I sat down and chatted with some folks on my team about what kind of tools that they were using right now and how we're seeing them. And generally speaking, infrastructure people potentially supporting developers that are developing AI solutions or extending existing solutions inside their environments is definitely one form of AI that they're hitting with. But the actual day-to-day of what you're doing and what you're working with comes down to an awful lot of some simple tools that you may not be aware of that we do have available to you. You can use these right now today. You can implement them, you can go ahead and deploy them, and you can start to play with them right now. So long as you have an Azure account, so long as you happen to, use PowerShell, because there's AI inside of PowerShell now you can use. And then also, again, using additional tools that come along with AI integrations, like our phenomenal little GitHub Copilot.
Yeah, and I don't think we talk about this enough, like how many AI scenarios are either targeted at software developers vibe coding or building AI applications with those LLMs, or it's the other end of the scale where we have scenarios about Copilot and M365 and how our sales teams are using it and our end users are using it. So let's bring these AI capabilities back into the context of somebody in the IT department.
Right, so if you think about it, most infrastructure folks, most people working in IT, you almost define yourself by the tools that you use. When you get up in the morning, you go into the office. I'm familiar with the lens of what's going on by checking my logs, looking for alerts, looking for tickets that need to be processed that might not have been processed, or looking at the performance data of a particular workload that I'm managing and stuff like that. Yeah. So I thought we'd go ahead and just show you a quick little example of a tool that we call Copilot in Azure, which is built into Azure, obviously. I've got a demo here that has a Copilot in Azure, if you haven't seen this just yet. I'm just gonna wait until the prompter switches over to my video machine, my demo machine. There we go. Is it? Is it up? Is it live? Yes, it is. Sorry. I was looking at this one, not over this one here. We got it. So this is a standard Azure portal. I happen to be signed in this case, as a Java support person. Again, I'm using this as a video demonstration because you don't want to wait for the pauses for things to happen. But in this case, I've got Copilot. I'm going to launch inside the browser itself for the Copilot experience. And at the bottom, you can see the prompt that I'm asking, saying, hey, what activities can I perform on these virtual machines, by the way? Copilot thinks about what it's going to be doing. It's going to come back with a result. It's going to be querying stuff. And it says, hey, here's a list of stuff that I can do. You should know this already by working inside the portal. I can start, I can stop, I can deallocate, things like that. This is part of your domain knowledge, but a more junior person might not know what you can do. What I will call out here is the fact that I only am able to do these things if I am actually enabled to be able, if I'm enabled to be able to function and change and start and stop and everything else. If I'm a contributor only, if I'm a contributor, yes. If I'm a reader, no, I can't actually impact the change of a machine. So there's limited stuff that I can do.
So that's really great because you can, in essence, give even your level 1 help desk staff, and maybe you don't want them anywhere near your Azure portal, but you can restrict that level of seniority and knowledge and what they can do with role-based access control, which we should be doing anyway with our accounts in Azure. But Copilot's going to respect that, so they can't go and try and delete resources or do things that they shouldn't be doing if they don't have those access rights and those roles.
You got it. So the next command I just said, or next prompt I just asked you, said, hey, go ahead and stop and deallocate these machines. Now, if I was a person that was not allowed to do that, it would fail. If I am a person I am allowed to go ahead and do that because these are my machines, that's great. And another thing that's interesting here is, notice I didn't even qualify what those machines are. That's our first tip for how you should be looking at this. Because what's going to happen is Copilot's going to think about it, and I need to query the graph. I need to go off and query machines. I got to figure out what's available. I need to have more specific details with this prompt. And because I'm about to do some irreversible damage by stopping a machine, it actually wants to confirm this. So human intervention is required in this case. So I was not specific enough, and it says, interesting here, I don't know what machines it's talking about. I've got 10,000 machines in my subscription. It's used the context of the web browser and the portal blade on the left-hand side as part of its source material to know what machines I'm talking about. It wants to confirm that with me, and then, yes, I'm going to say go ahead and confirm it. And it says, OK, I've got all I needed. I'm going to start that actual stopping of the machines, and we're good to go. So I've stopped and deallocated some machines. Now, Copilot here, I'm going to go ahead and ask another prompt. What is the current status of these machines? So just doing a simple query to find out are the machines happy? And it should come back again because it has context of the machines that I have on the left-hand side. Comes back and says, well, here's the stuff. 𝗬𝗲 test 1, 𝗬𝗲 test 2, both of them are deallocated. Fantastic. So it's gone ahead and processed that. And once again, go ahead and start both virtual machines. What I hope you've noticed with this quick little demo, simple demo, is, hey, it's going to take the best that you've done with your prompting and try to make do with it. And if it doesn't have enough information from the prompting because it was a bad prompt, then it's going to try to pull in that extra information to be able to go off and help. Without that context, if I went in and said, hey, spin down my Kubernetes cluster, it would have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about because there is no context. I'm not on the AKS pane inside of the individual area. Therefore, it's going to come back and say, I don't really know what you're talking about, so I need more information, and then I can go through and iterate on those prompts. Not too bad. If we could go back to the deck, I want to kind of explain a little bit about what we were just talking about with prompting. But generally speaking, we should be thinking about breaking down complex tasks, making them easier, and giving them the idea of giving examples and giving explanations of what is our action, what is the flow that we're trying to do with that individual prompt. Now, what we've done is we've gone ahead here and given some example prompts that you'd be using if you happen to be working as an SRE or if you happen to be working as a platform engineer. And we have another one, which is interesting, which is analyzing a template. Any thoughts before we get there?
Before you get to that one, I think I can restart a VM. Like, I don't need Copilot to shut down, deallocate, and start up a new VM for me. But the art of learning how to prompt for our IT scenarios is really interesting when you start to get into the depths of troubleshooting stuff as well, because you have this conversation with Copilot where usually that would require me traveling all over the portal to different spaces. So I'd be going into the VM, going into Azure Monitor logs, going into different sections of the portal. But now I can keep the context up in that conversation flow, and I can start sending it questions and requests, and with agent mode, like doing things like all within that one window. It's going to literally save me travel time across that the portal.
Right. Now, how about we go the next step beyond this and take a look at something where we're looking to expand upon our domain knowledge. So instead of just simply working with the portal, let's go in and take a look at some options for how we get more complex. If we could, once again, flip back over the demo machine just to show you this one here. This time, I'm not using Azure Copilot. I'm just using regular old everyday M365 Copilot. And in this case, I'm going to say, how about you find me a ARM template that will go ahead and deploy a Kubernetes system in Azure.
Are you looking for templates on the
I'm
internet?
just randomly on the internet asking for a template that will deploy an AKS environment, and it found one.
Oh, it's better than going to Reddit, I guess. Okay.
So as you can see here, it has an actual template that I could use. It's set up as an ARM template, and it has that lovely YAML file with all the information. And in fact, if I remember correctly, this is about 2,500 lines of code that is inside of this to deploy. It's a simple deployment. It's a simple deployment. But the idea being is I now have a template that I could use, but I have no idea what it's actually going to be going off and doing. So let's use a tool, copy and paste this into a Visual Studio environment. Let's make a new test YAML file for my ARM template. Call it kubedeploy. And go ahead and save it. And in this case, go ahead and drop it in. And then, as you can see, about 2,500 lines. And then instead of just simply taking it for its worth of saying that this is an ARM template, let's go ahead and ask the Copilot inline. Say, hey, what does this template actually do? So it's going to analyze it, take a look at the actual flow, and it says, hey, this is an Azure Resource Manager template. It's deploying AKS. Here's all the components that it's going to go off and deploy. Quite a long list of all the different pieces. It's also going to come back and tell me, hey, this is a parameterized template. So you just need to go off and change some parameters, and you can actually use this. Now, if you didn't notice when I first looked at this template, it was actually coming from a known location, which was safe. Don't obviously go and deploy random ARM templates that you don't know. So you can see up here what parameters would I need to go ahead and provide for this template to function for me or to work. And it says, oh, there's only 2 of them that don't have default values, which is simply the admin username and the admin password. So filling in those 2 pieces of information, I can go ahead and do a full AKS deploy. It's kind of trusted only because it actually came from the official Microsoft open source repo.
So you're deploying it into your test dev
solutions to be able to go out and see it.
Okay, now I feel better.
But the idea being, it was smart enough to go ahead and make it so that I'm able to have a deploy, analyze what was required, and then make it so that I could deploy an AKS environment. I've never deployed an AKS environment in Azure before. You've done many times, but I'm more of a more traditional infrastructure type person.
Yeah, and I've got a traditional infrastructure background too, but it's nice for picking up those new technologies. I'm just going to ask a quick show of hands. Who is using VS Code for IT scenarios? Okay, yeah, a few more people than I thought. If you're not, that's kind of one way of modernizing your IT department, especially for managing even things like your PowerShell scripts, especially now that we've got VS Code Copilot and GitHub Copilot that can help you with this sorts of thing in terms of explanations and analysis and how do I write a script that does X. Like, please don't fire up ChatGPT and ask it to write your PowerShell scripts. It may do a good job, but things like using VS Code and GitHub Copilot, they're more grounded in the knowledge of how good PowerShell actually works.
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of a flow for what we're doing with Copilot in Azure, we thought we'd show you this little flow chart for what this is. Basically, inside the portal, you go ahead and on the right-hand side, fire it off, and you give it a prompt. And inside that prompt, it's now going to go in and take a look and see what blade is open, the context of that blade, your logged in context, that sort of stuff that happens to be there. It's going to go down to the orchestration layer with the prompt and also with the context and with the questions I'm asking. And it's then going to go ahead and take that prompt and response filter, determine which plugin it needs to talk to. So if I was in the networking area, it's going to go off and talk to the networking section. The networking team has made a bunch of different plugins that are able to go off and make changes or updates different networking services. It then goes ahead and uses that plugin to access the data under your context for who you are. So if you don't have access to that particular network resource or to that express route or to that endpoint, you won't be able to do anything. It then comes back with the response for that particular API call that it just made, and then potentially will go back over to the portal, ask for confirmation, and then go ahead and do something. When it actually goes ahead and does something, again, under your context, it goes and applies something to the Azure Resource Manager level of information.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting architecture, because I think we think of AI, especially chatbots, as being, I'm doing a natural language search, it's sending it to a large language model, it's processing the tokens, and then it's coming back with a response, right? And that's generally what we think of when we think of those kinds of capabilities. But in this case, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you want to look at Azure Monitor or Azure Networking, they are two different places inside the Azure portal, and they're run by two different teams. So what we've done is we've been able to pull all of that knowledge together by having specific handlers for those capabilities that are experts in those capabilities. You don't need to ask the Azure Monitor Copilot chat. You just need to ask Copilot in the Azure portal, and it does send off that response to the specific handler for those services. And then you going to get the best response, but it's grounded not only in the knowledge of your environment, your Azure environment, but also supplemented with things like docs and learn, KQL queries, and all of those other things.
Right, and I will call out that on day one, just after the keynote, there was a breakout session where our VP, 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, was talking about the changes coming to Copilot in Azure. And one of the things that we're bringing to Copilot in Azure is the more agentic view of things, where you can now start having levels of automation and little worker bees, if you will, going ahead and doing stuff. Again, in your context, with identities, how you manage them, to have some extra layer of automation you can have.
Yeah, you go automate all the things. I love it.
Now, in this side of things, do you want to take this one as far as the learning side? For what
100%. Look, one of the things that I love about this industry is the fact that I'm still learning. I've been in IT since I was 18 years old, and I've got a big list of things I'm going to go and play with when I get back to the office, because the industry keeps on moving forward, and I love that about it. So how can we use AI to help support that, to help us distill all of the brand new knowledge that's coming out, especially in the context of what we need to be learning?
Right.
So to start with, look at using Copilot to generate prompting examples specific to IT Pro and SRE roles. We actually used Copilot to help us come up with some of these demos and these prompts as a bit of a baseline. So don't think about not starting with a blank piece of paper. Sometimes Copilot is really great for getting some ideas down, and then you can go through it and go, yeah, I like that one's great, that one's terrible, like that's not realistic. So use that human validation, but use it to give you a head start so that you don't have to get over the mental inertia of, I don't have anything, like how do I brainstorm that first bullet point list? Let Copilot do that for you, and then you can just go and refine it. Also, look at using it to generate learning plans on a specific topic. So if there is something that you want to dive into a little bit deeper, go and ask Copilot to generate a learning plan for you, recommend some resources, and then again, you don't have to hunt and find and gather all of these different resources, especially when they're across multiple different platforms, including other people's blogs, other people's YouTube channels. So many people are making great educational content these days, and it can be a little bit hard to find, and so that is where the AI is really good as well. But when you do that, make sure that when you're doing that prompting, you're level setting. You're actually giving Copilot some information about where you are at today. So you might turn around and say, I've been an IT server admin for 20 years. I'm really familiar with that as an operating system and application deployment. But my organization wants to use Kubernetes. How do I learn about containers? So it's going to refine the results that it brings, and it's going to ground it in the fact that you actually already have some technical knowledge. It's not going to explain the basics to you in the content that it finds. Or you might want to do the reverse and say, I've got a staff member who is new in career to IT, and they are going to need the section on what is TCP/IP, for example. So yeah, use that as a bit of a level set.
I'll add on to that one there, just from the perspective of some of those earlier prompting slides that we had inside the deck here. That was literally us going through and asking Copilot to say, hey, what would we be giving people inside of a session targeted towards infrastructure professionals as examples of how to do better prompting, being specifics and giving context, rather than just the generic, come by my 14-day course on Instagram for how to prompt and load your bank statements into ChatGPT to figure out how to save money. Like, put it in context of what you want to learn, and then go and challenge and take a look at the output to see if it's going to be valid for you. Very good. There was a new capability that was released today, this week as part of the Worldwide Learning Group at Microsoft. You may have got a chance to visit them, what's known as the Skilling Playground up on the 3rd level here in West Moscone. And they had something that was specifically talking about the AI Skills Navigator. This is very, very cool. You will all have access to be able to try this out and to use it in your post-event email. They'll give you instructions on how you can sign up to do it. But you have your Microsoft account that you log into from your profile perspective. You qualify the things that you want to learn about inside of this particular playground area for your Skills Navigator. And then it's going to be pulling resources from, as you mentioned, documentation, Microsoft Learn, LinkedIn Learning videos, YouTube channel videos, but they're curated. Again, they're not some rando that's gone off and write a blog post about something. They're curated things around what you should take a look at and what meets your particular learning style. If you're video-based, if you're got to have hands-on based for some more immersive stuff, if you're more of a person that likes to read and do research that way, it's going to customize what you want to learn about and how you can learn and bubble up all the proper resources.
Yeah, so the main difference between that and what I was saying earlier about using Copilot more generically is that this is that curated set of resources that we've approved that this AI agent is going to draw on. So if you want, more official, a little bit more sort of quality in the answers that you're getting, then this can be the way to go. I also love the fact that you can build playlists for your teams so that you can put stuff together and go and share it with other people as well. But then Copilot in the other scenario still does have a place, especially if it's more the how do I do? Because the Microsoft documentation and the way that we make content may be very sort of prescriptive, like here are the 5 steps. But then we do have a wealth of content creators, Microsoft MVPs, that come across scenarios in real world in their organizations that we haven't come across. And they're like, okay, so I followed the documentation and I found that I had to adjust this, or I needed to compensate for X because of the specifics in my organization, and then they shared that back. So there is literally a wealth of knowledge out there for you to learn from. And this Copilot, whether it's Copilot or AI Skills Navigator, helps you find it. Right.
Now, I have a gray beard. I've been in the industry for quite some time, and there's definitely different levels of comfort with new changes. I would have to say that almost everybody in this room has been through one of a number of different layers of changes in the industry. This is another change in that industry that we need to worry about. Again, I was originally hired to rip out ArcNet from a network to switch it over to 10BASE-T with terminators and stuff like that, if I remember correctly.
So I was originally hired to clone DOS on 286 and 386 PCs to roll out to bank branches.
Yeah.
So we've seen some things.
Oh yeah, so mainframe, client server, distributed systems, cloud, hybrid, Kubernetes, cloud native, AI. It's just simply more and more different views of additional technologies that are coming in as far as an industry shift is concerned, and they come at different speeds. But one thing that I really want to kind of stress is I was having a conversation with some of the developers in our group that we have, and they were talking about how they've really enjoyed using AI to be able to help them with their coding skills. They don't currently believe it's going to be replacing any of them, but it does replace tasks, and it does replace some of the toil that they were faced with before, which kind of frees them up to do other things. And so that kind of now gives them the ability to go in and say, you know what, I am going to go off and build out this functionality more because I've got some more time. I can do some scaffolding to get it up and working again to make it faster. So they're now investing some more time like that. But it brings up an interesting one is, what about people that are coming into the industry right now? They're used to using AI tools, ChatGPT and others, to be able to go off and code. They're using Cursor. They're using GitHub Copilot, stuff like that. What advice do we have for handling and helping those folks, do you think?
Yeah. Look, there are more and more people joining the IT department who don't know what Y2K was.
They weren't even born in Y2K.
No, that's right. Yeah, they have a 2 in their birth year. What the heck? So when I go back to the start of my career, before we had free access, available access to the internet, I was sat down in a room with a whiteboard, and I was very fortunate to move from a role in a business side of the banking into the IT department. I had no formal training. I hadn't done a computer science degree. And one of the guys in the department sat down and got a whiteboard and a whiteboard marker, and he showed me how TCP/IP addressing works. So that fundamental foundational knowledge has been absolutely key to my career, and that was how we learned back in the day with people teaching us things. I think I've got 2 tips in terms of how we help out the AI generation. They are coming into the workforce already familiar with technology, and in most cases, familiar with AI. Now that can sometimes be their downfall because they don't know when the AI is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that we need to do is to teach them this curiosity and make sure that they question things, that they don't just rely on the answer that they've been given as being the correct answer. But also, I want to encourage them to use AI to ask, how does this work? But why? How does this work? And I think sometimes when things are working, everything's great. You can go into a role when you're doing operational IT stuff, when things are ticking over, but as soon as something doesn't work, those troubleshooting skills are what we have built our careers on. And their troubleshooting skill might just be to ask Copilot, why isn't this working? And I think we need to go back and educate them about, this is DNS, this is why when DNS is down, everything else is down, right? So yeah, we absolutely need to be teaching them that level of curiosity to question Copilot and to go and ask how things work, and also make sure that they are getting a grounding in that fundamental knowledge of things like DNS.
Right, so basically as folks that are already in the industry, that are playing and working with AI, leveraging those tools and those capabilities right now in our everyday lives, with that domain knowledge, we need to be able to share, and we need to be able to mentor and bring up. And I can't stress how much I really fundamentally believe that is where the skill gap is going to exist. And it's all of us in this room that are going to be the ones that are addressing that skills gap. If you think about it, you would have a bell curve like this as far as adoption and how things are going. The skilled workforce, the majority of the 80% in the middle of that bell, we're heading to a place where it's actually going to be inverted the wrong way, where it's going to be domain knowledge people on the way out of the industry, and then it's going to be new people coming in as seniors and others that have skills, but they're lacking that domain knowledge, and there's going to be this trough of despair in the middle. Not that I'm doom and gloom or anything, but we have to work to be able to kind of level this back out again and go back into a traditional bell curve as far as the skills are there. So in some of the things we were showing you earlier with the prompting, simple things that you would do hopefully anyways, as opposed to having your own USB stick of all your automations. Instead, put that into a repo, make it so other people can share it, make it so that you're documenting what these different things happen. The exact same thing exists for prompts. When you find good prompts that work for you, for your workloads that you're working with, iterating on top of AI PowerShell, iterating on top of Copilot for Azure, when you find stuff that's working, save those prompts, document those prompts to be able to share some of that domain knowledge for where it is. Now, we couldn't move on from this particular section without talking about specifically AI in your organization. There's some interesting things that I wanted to share for potential adoption curves. If you're, again, we've been fortunate to be part of the AI revolution over the last couple of years, and know people that have been inside of machine learning and others for many more years before that. But where things are right now, I like to just kind of take back a little bit of a reality check for folks for how AI shows up in your organization. Not everybody in this room is a developer that is going off and trying to enhance the capabilities of their existing internal systems and adding AI into it, coding AI chatbots or working with stuff like that. The majority of how AI is going to come across the majority of people inside of our organization, our customers, is going to be through off-the-shelf or built-in AI capabilities inside of Azure Copilot, or inside of M365 Copilot, or inside of Salesforce, or inside of insert product X here, whatever it happens to be. Those off-the-shelf things are going to have AI capabilities that you're going to hopefully be able to put some guardrails around, set up proper roles-based access control to, and also set up context for what data it should be able to have access to safely roll it out for the folks that are going to be using that kind of stuff. But going beyond that, when you actually are bringing AI tools and capabilities into your environment, there are some things you have to think about, but they're kind of the same as if you're bringing any new workload inside your environment, right?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the hype cycle of AI, where organizations have gone quickly to what can we easily put in our organization to test this out, to play with the waters, to see whether or not this is going to work for us or not, with somebody off to the side going, and what about security?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the mode that I think a lot of organizations have been in. We have seen sort of mixed volume, I guess, of organizations into whether or not they are actually at the stage where those AI workloads have made it into production and are mission critical. So some of the larger organizations that maybe have bigger development teams will get to that space faster. Some organizations may have stopped at the, yes, we think it will work for us. We're not quite sure how we are quantifying the business benefit, and is this actually going to be worth the cost? And so we think that we're really on the cusp of more organizations moving from that playing and testing and experimentation stage and throwing it over the fence into production. And we all know what happens when our software developers want to put things into production, right? We start to go down this mental list that we have because we want to protect our organizations. We want to make things as stable as possible so that they are responsive and they are resilient and reliable. So all of the things that we traditionally think about when we're managing the infrastructure that sits under the workload is still super important. Your AI workloads need to be resilient.
Yep.
They need to be secure. We're worried about things like data loss prevention and the security of, if we're putting data into these LLMs, is it going anywhere, or is it training somebody else's model? How much is it all going to cost me? Do I need to back it up? How does the networking work? Am I holding this inside my environment, or do I need to make some of these AI capabilities public facing? Is it on my e-commerce site? Not to mention this little thing called compliance and regulation. How does this fit in with FedRAMP or ISO or any of the other three-letter acronyms and more that we need to make sure that our organization is compliant with?
Right. So again, these are the same types of considerations you'd be having if you're deploying a brand new SAP migration from on-premises inside of an Azure environment. The same type of things you'd have to consider bringing any kind of new workload into your environment across the board. But is a slight nuance and context required for, is it a new application that has AI capabilities and that sort of stuff? Some very simple examples, as you mentioned. The one that stands out for me is really, especially if you're working with agents, as an example, we talked about it earlier, is how are these agentic systems represented inside of your world? And how do you control what they have access to and where they can go off and touch stuff, and how they can go off and be constrained so that they're not just running crazy across your systems.
Yeah.
Because as with most developments, initially, you have a set of guidelines and spec. You go off and you develop that particular solution so it meets all those needs. You have to review and refine, but then you potentially will be finding out areas that need to be improved upon and helped out.
Yep. Every IT pro that I have spoken to at this conference has mentioned Agent 365.
Oh, yeah.
So the ability for that product to go out and discover what AI agents are running inside your organization and how much they are being used, like that discoverability in terms of us being able to protect our environments is so, so important. And we haven't had a tool to do that yet.
Right. And likewise as well, from the context of what all those different agents can ask, it's the other one, which is what we called the work IQ, I think it was, which is simply all the different pieces within your organization that's constrained and inside of your world, of your subscriptions, what they can have access to and how they can have access to through the graph and for others.
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to those questions that we're going to ask about any workload, there's some new stuff for AI. And I only just started this list. We could dig into this a little bit deeper, but things like, how do I know that my large language model isn't hallucinating and it's having some very weird conversations with my customers on my website? Right? That kind of bad behavior of an LLM model. You may or may not have somebody who is an AI expert in your organization who is responsible for and looking at that. So that might be a question that you need to ask in terms of how are we doing anomaly detection to make sure that the chatbot responses aren't going off the rails. And those are little nuances that we might not have needed to worry about in other workloads before, that we're either going to need to understand ourselves how to monitor for things like that, or we're going to need to be comfortable that somebody else in the organization has the skills and is looking at those areas, just so that we don't end up in the next incident call.
Right. Now, if you're playing around using Copilot Studio or with any of the iterative capabilities inside of AI Foundry, that's the hallucination side of things, is dealing with what they call the temperature and where the temperature happens to sit as one of the many different dials that you can dial up. And it's interesting to note the different AI vendors have different temperature settings for what they have as their defaults. Some are quite off the charts for a particular social network that I happen to know. Some of them are a bit more conservative with how they handle things, like more corporate style focused on things as far as temperature is concerned. Anecdotally, I'll just share here as an example, we alluded to it earlier with Copilot for Azure. Again, you're talking to the different services that are enabled with plugins inside that environment for what you can do and how you can manage it. If it falls through, if you will, that kind of net that you're asking it to do something that the plugin can't do, it then goes and it falls down into the what can I do, or at least share in the prompt that's inside of official documentation. It doesn't go beyond the official documentation for what it can do. Whereas the AI shell capabilities inside of PowerShell, you can choose, do you want to plug this into the external OpenAI API key, or do you want to plug this into our Copilot for Azure one? And again, it has boundaries that it's kind of set to try to minimize those hallucinations and minimize those different bad behaviors.
Yeah.
So each tool has different tuning knobs that you are able to adjust.
It's interesting because we didn't mention it when we talked about tooling, but grounding in context of how we do things around here is really interesting as well, because I don't necessarily want any PowerShell script. I want a PowerShell script that looks like the other PowerShell scripts that I have in my organization. So I might have a standard for how they're put together, how the commenting is done, all of that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's super important.
Yep. Bringing this one into kind of a summary, if you will, we kind of alluded to it at the very beginning, and we'll simply repeat it again here now too. AI, in general brackets, is simply an additional tool that you can bring into your toolbox, that you can use to potentially eliminate some toil or speed some things up to be able to get things done. Again, as you mentioned, an example, my wife asked me, she's a project manager for a particular athletics company. They were doing a rollout and they had a variety of different notification distribution lists that would happen for the different stages of their 5,000 line project file. Who would get notified of what when different things happen. They were all distribution lists. She was like, I need to know who's on all these distribution lists and if they are active or not and what countries they're from. I'm like, oh, that's just a couple of simple PowerShell things I can do. Query AD, find the list, break them apart to members, format them as a CSV, then go in and query each individual one to be able to go in and find out are they active, what country they're from, and then spit me out a nice format at the end. That would probably have taken me a good couple of hours to kind of chunk through to be able to do it because I'm a bit rusty in my PowerShell, but I just used M365 Copilot and then validated it with AI Shell to say, hey, this is what I want to do, document this for me, go off and build this and see what comes back. It took me about 15 minutes to be able to pull something like that off.
So it pulled through the M365 graph to get that data?
Yeah. Very simple stuff.
That's really cool. I do wonder, like I love the fact that there is that productivity angle for us in IT, right?
Yep.
There is the, can I do the same job faster with these tools that I'm using? And that productivity angle is really interesting. But Do you think we're going to get to a point where AI is going to take our jobs? Because we were told that the cloud was, that we weren't going to have any IT pros anymore because it was all going to be in the cloud and there would be nothing for us to do. I don't, like, that didn't really pan out the way that people might have thought it was.
If you actually looked at the stats from different job titles and the ones that were hiring, again, Azure as an example, as a hyperscale cloud, has been around for 15 years now. The number of people working in IT has actually doubled from when the cloud came out. And so the old sales pitch of the cloud is going to replace all the operations folks never really came to fruition.
Nice.
The way I see it right now with AI, if you're empowering and embracing yourself and using AI as an additional tool set to get things done, you're going to be definitely very much in demand and have some in-demand skills. And even more so if, as we talked about earlier, you share and you mentor this stuff back with the people that are more junior inside of your teams. I don't see an initial displacement of a massive amount of folks inside of an AI industry. Again, we'll see how it pans out, but I don't believe it's going to end up down that path. How about you?
Yeah, look, I think the cloud evolution is probably a good analogy for people in IT roles, because we didn't used to have the cloud, and then we did, and there was early skepticism and a lot of people holding back on whether or not they were going to put workloads in the cloud, if it was worth it, whether it was going to be extra work or remove work. And what I was talking to people in the industry about then was keep an eye on the job vacancies and see how many of the descriptions of your role or the next role that you want is mentioning cloud as being a required skill. And that went from nothing. Like, you go back and there was no cloud in any of your job descriptions when it was first starting up. And now you pretty much won't find an IT role without it requiring you to have some cloud experience or knowledge. I think that's where we're going to get to with AI, because organizations are just seeing how valuable it is as a tool, that they're going to expect that all of their staff, not just the IT department, have some sort of experience or can demonstrate how they were using AI in their jobs. But ultimately, it is evolutionary, and so the more things change, the more they stay the same. We talked about how AI is just another workload, and fundamentally, the things that we do are not going to change. They're the same as they were when I was looking after 4,700 mainframe controllers in a branch network. We still had all of those same concerns and things that we needed to look at. Yeah, things are a little bit more complex. We've got things like hallucination, we've got data breaches and stuff that we have to worry about. But ultimately, the biggest challenge for us, and the way that we can keep current in this industry, keep excited about it, keep learning and staying relevant, is embracing new tools. So we're not going to be chiseling stone anymore. We've evolved a little bit from that. So if you can get your head around using AI as this tool to help make your job easier, and then spread the word to help others too, maybe we can all knock off at 5 p.m. and go home knowing that our environments are stable and running and nobody's going to get called out tonight. Yeah,
and again, definitely the fact that you now have a iterative conversation interface into your tools, you have this iterative conversation into possible learning resources, it simply continues to reinforce what we already do right now as being part of the infrastructure or developer world inside of IT. We're always continuously learning. I just need to learn and understand how to use these tools to our advantage to continue and learn. I do want to ask and say one more thing from a housekeeping perspective. First of all, you're all here on the first session on the last day of the conference, and for that I applaud and say thank you for being here. The second thing I will ask, I wasn't asking for applause, but the second thing that I will ask is quite simply put, there's a very important thing that you've probably just phased out and don't look at anymore. But having you actually provide us with feedback, was this type of session useful for you? Was this at the right technical level? Was this something that was a good use of your time? How can we do things better? We, as people that help create the content for this particular event, find this information absolutely invaluable. So please take a moment when you get a chance and put down some thoughts, pen to paper, for how we can do better, how we can continue to grow Microsoft Ignite and other conferences. and hopefully you enjoyed this particular session.
Yeah, if you want more sessions like this, please let us know in the feedback.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you. Cheers.